don't know about you, but I've not found the last couple of weeks to be all that easy. In fact, I found it quite difficult. And during the week, a couple of folk phoned me and I talked to them on the phone. And afterwards, they recognised that I was perhaps feeling a bit flat. And both of them sent me wonderful text messages full of words of encouragement, and that lifted my spirits no end. Well, yesterday during the sermon, during the church service, I mentioned a verse from Paul's letter to the Thessalonians. And I just felt like God was saying, well, follow that up a bit with the thought for the day today. So here it is. Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 11, "So encourage each other and build each other up, just as you already are doing." Well, my thoughts turn to the New Testament character of Barnabas, that wonderful man whose nickname, his proper name was Joseph, but his nickname was Barnabas. The church gave him that, the disciples gave him that nickname because it means son of encouragement. And all the way through the book of Acts, you find stories about Barnabas that show that he exactly was that, a man who encouraged others. Take a look at chapter 4, for example. You'll see there that the church had lots of people who were in need, financial need, difficulties, they were struggling. Barnabas had a field, and he thought, if I sell that field, I can give the money to the church. And that's exactly what he did. He gave the money to the apostles that he gained from selling that field, and they distributed it to all those who had needs. And that was a great encouragement to the church. Move on to chapter 9 and you find that Saul was converted on the road to Damascus. He'd been a great enemy of the church, arrested many, put them in prison. But on the road to Damascus, he was wonderfully converted. He went to Jerusalem, and there the church were very sceptical about him. Was this man putting on a show to infiltrate the leadership of the church there, and then arrest and imprison more Christians? They were very sceptical. But Barnabas stood up. He stood beside Paul and introduced Paul and showed that this wasn't a fake, this was something real. He greatly encouraged Paul in his ministry. And then, of course, he went on to go on mission journeys with Paul. And the two of them encouraged each other. But it was Barnabas, the son of encouragement, who stood beside Paul. He didn't have to take the front seat all the time. He was prepared to stand aside and support Paul. And they were great buddies together. But it was Barnabas who was the man of encouragement. And then go on to chapter 11, where the church at Antioch had come into being, and they were doing great things. And the church at Jerusalem sent Barnabas to see what was going on. And when Barnabas got there, he was greatly impressed with what was happening, what God was doing through the people there. And it says in Acts chapter 11 that he stayed there a whole year. And this is the great thing. He spent a year there, and Luke tells us that Barnabas encouraged them all. Then you flip over to chapter 13. Barnabas and Paul went on missionary journey, and they took young John Mark, with them. But something went wrong, and John Mark couldn't take the strain and the pressure of mission work, and he gave up, and he went home. In a sense, he was a failure on the mission field. A little while later, when that mission journey was over, Paul and Barnabas wanted to go on a second missionary journey together. But what happened? Mark wanted to go along. Paul said, absolutely not. He's failed. We don't want a failure on the mission field with us. But Barnabas stuck by John Mark and said, all right, Paul, if you won't take him, I'll take him. And he took young John Mark off again. He nurtured him over the years. And John Mark went on to write one of the Gospels that we know as Mark's Gospel. And later on, Paul admitted that perhaps he'd been wrong and that Mark became one of his great friends. What a great ministry encouragement is. And I want to challenge you this week to set out to encourage others by whatever means you can. We're living in difficult circumstances. Things that we can have to do differently. But by whatever means you can, try this week, every day, to encourage somebody. Perhaps through a letter, or an email, or a text, or a wave through the window at somebody passing by or delivering something to you. Perhaps by dropping off some shopping to somebody who can't get out of the house. There's all kinds of ways that we, as God's people, can encourage other people during this difficult time. I was encouraged as I got a message that Sandy wasn't very well, but that Sandy herself in hospital had been encouraged by a verse from Scripture that came out of one of the prayer meetings at the beginning of the week. That had greatly encouraged her. And you know what? Sandy's message encouraged me. Paul says, so encourage each other and build each other up, just as you already are doing. So have a great week, and God bless you all.